Have you all seen those videos with former governor of Bayelsa State, Siriake Dixon, who is now known as the national leader of the NDC? I think that emulates the title given to the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. For many years, he was the national leader of the APC, a post that didn't exist in the constitution, it didn't exist on paper, but nevertheless wielded so much power. So I was listening to, Siriake Dixon, former governor, where he was letting rip on supporters of his presidential candidate. That's in his party, the NDC. He said, that, you can't come into my party to disparage me. You are not doing me a favor. You're not doing this party a favor. The party is doing you a favor by offering you a platform. And that brings me to the point I raised earlier on about how, in these parts, here in Nigeria, the only serious candidates are the ones who form their political parties. The only reason Siriake Dixon could say all those things is because he controls the party. And he said so in not so many words. He said, if it is easy, why don't you go and form your own party? You can't come into my party and dictate how we're going to run the party. People have been in the party before you, all supporters of Peter Obi, came into the party with him. Everything is not going to stop because you all have been imported into the NDC. These are very strong words, and it brings us back, to the question of jumping ship when there are problems. Perhaps if Peter Obi had stayed in the Labour Party, in fact, people are alluding now to the fact that he could have remained in APGA and been the presidential candidate of APGA. After all, APGA was handed to him by the founder of APGA. So now we see all the things that people criticized in other political parties, the alleged dictatorship that people thought existed in the APC, the alleged imposition of candidates, what people thought was a lack of democracy. Now they've seen that to run a political party, sometimes you have to be harsh, high-handed, and, focus. Otherwise, the journey, the destination, everything will derail. That man is saying it as it is. If you don't like his rules, go and form your own party. And that brings me to the point that I'm actually trying to make here. The decision of ATIKU and OBI again this year not to run together, to run separately in 2027 as they did in 2023, in my opinion, benefits only one person, and that's the incumbent president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And I'm telling you this based on fact. Look at the figures they scored in the 2023 election. On his own, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu scored 8,794,726 votes. So let's say about 8.8 million votes. Obi had 6.101533. So that's about 6.1 million votes. ATIKU had 6,984,520 million votes. So let's say about 7 million votes. Between Obi and ATIKU, they had 13 million to Tinubu's 8.7 million. Now, if they had come together now in 2027 to harness those figures that they both shared in 2023, they would have really given the APC a run for its money. But now they're running separately. And of course, with that new Federal High Court decision coming in, we don't know if the ADC will have any candidate in 2027. The journey back to Aso Rock is looking very smooth for the APC's candidate, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Of course, it's always very difficult to push out an incumbent here in Nigeria. It's been done before, but there were many factors that, enabled that defeat to happen. One of which was the candidate reneging on a promise to do one term. In this case, political watchers are already calling the election for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because it looks like the opposition parties haven't really got their act together. And election winning is about the numbers. Looking at the spread and looking at what all the candidates are bringing to the table, it makes more sense to think that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is in a good place, to win that election. Will ATIKU get 25% of the votes in any of the 17 southern states? The country is divided into 19 northern and 17 southern states. To win the presidential election, you need the highest number of votes. And then you need the highest number of votes across 2/3 of the federation, which means at least 24 states. So you win some states outright, get the highest number of votes there, but you also need to score at least 25% of votes in every state that you lose. What does that mean? If, for instance, in Lagos State, the winner gets 100,000 votes, for you to still qualify as president after the election, if you win 25,000 of those votes in Lagos State, you are still eligible to be president, provided you have the total highest number of votes in that election. So these are the reasons why many political watchers are saying that the election is not looking good for anyone else but President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Don't forget, Peter Obi's running mate, Rabiu Kwankwaso, his stronghold is Kano State. In 2023, he scored 1,496,687 votes. Now, can he garner more votes anywhere else in the north? Because that is Peter Obi's gamble, that Kwankwaso will bring in, with his Kwankwasia movement, will bring in more votes from the north. But that is neither here nor there. And the reason is simple. I don't see how Kwankwaso is going to garner any votes from the north when the north has a potential presidential candidate in Atiku Abubakar. No one will be voting for someone as vice when you have an opportunity to have the president. So, of course, in my opinion, that erases whatever challenge Kwankwaso will be bringing. Kwankwaso, after all, is only the running mate, vice president to Peter Obi in the NDC. I'm sure most of the northerners would rather go with the vice president who is the presidential candidate, of the ADC, and would rather have him as the president. Now, what does that mean even for the chances of Atiku? Many are still upset with him for still trying to enter this race in 2027, knowing that it has been zoned to the south. But that's a video for another day, because Atiku Abubakar is alleging that the reason he is contesting in 2027 is that he thinks the North has been cheated out of many years as president.